In 2021, when we're doing recaps of the WHA players that jumped from the NHL to star with the squads, and there were a lot of squads in the WHA, we've been breaking down how they got there. Now, I did a previous podcast on this great player for the Boston Bruins. Eventually ended up in Vancouver, then the WHA, Don Tannahill. Now, I spoke with a member of his family recently. We got to talking about how he ended up in the WHA, and I didn't give enough information in the previous podcast, and I apologize for that, about how he ended up in the WHA. I'm going to recap a little bit what I did in the previous podcast, but I want you to listen to this carefully. It all ties in, ladies and gentlemen, with that 1972 first WHA entry draft. And a lot of players got drafted. They either were playing in the minor leagues or weren't officially signed or weren't officially NHL, and he ended up in the NHL, WHA, due to the weird way that they were allowed to draft. Anyway, let's talk about Don Tannahill. Now, just to recap for everybody, Don Tannahill was a highly regarded player that came in with the Niagara Falls Flyers, which was a Boston Bruins affiliate for a number of years. Now, a lot of great players played in that squad over the years. Derek Sanderson, Don Marcotte, Jim Lorentz, all these great quality defenders as well, a lot of good defensive players. Tannahill was part of that, what do you call, late 1960s graduation class. Now, he played 3 years with the Flyers between 67 and 69. Best season, of course, was that last year, 89 points in 54 games. Now, he won a Memorial Cup with them in 1968, was an OHA All-Star second team in 1969. Now, here's where it gets interesting. He broke in with the Vancouver Canucks. They took him in the intra-league draft June 5th, 1972, when Vancouver was building their team. Now, he was also selected by Chicago Cougars in the 72 WHA draft, which was the first ever major league draft for the association, in February 72. So February to June, he gets drafted by Chicago. He's played in the minor leagues, and Vancouver wants to take a chance on him. Just a little recap here. Don had a very good minor league career before he headed to the NHL. He had some injuries. There was some question if the Bruins were going to give him a full shot, and unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Now, you got to understand, like at the time there, the Boston Bruins, they had numerous good prospects in the system. Now, he was sent to the Blazers in 1970 and 1971. 1970, it was an injury-riddled season. Boston Braves in 72, he put up 74 points in 76 games. Now, that Boston team won the AHL regular season title in 72. He was an AHL All-Star second team in Boston that year as well. Broke into the NHL and was an immediate sensation with the Canucks. He scored 2 hat-tricks as a 23-year-old rookie for Vancouver 73. He had the first NHL hat-trick for Vancouver in a 4-3 win over California December 26, 72. Now, he put him on a line with, of all people, Andre Boudreau, former Montreal Canadian prospect, and the great Bobby Schwartz. Now, at the time, they were considered kind of their power line. Now, bear with me now. His WHA rights were traded by Chicago to Minnesota in exchange for future considerations in May 1973. Now, in June of 1974, he signed a contract with the Minnesota Fighting Saints of the WHA. Had some good success in Minnesota. Now, his seasons with Vancouver, again, the second season in 74, a lot of injuries were holding him back. Decided to jump to the WHA. 53 points in 75, and then the big move, of course, where he moved on to the Calgary Cowboys, a very popular squad at the time, but are getting under financial trouble. Now, bear with me now. On September 4th, 75, he was traded by Minnesota with George Morrison and the rights to Wally Olds and Joe Micheletti to Calgary in exchange for, of all people, Johnny McKenzie, the former Bruins. So technically he was traded for another former Bruin, player, and cash. Now, in August of 1977, his rights were assigned by the WHA to Quebec after the Calgary franchise officially folded. Now, in September that year, his WHA rights and contract obligations were transferred by Quebec with Peter Donnelly to Edmonton to settle dispute over the rights to the very man Ron Chipperfield, who had signed with Edmonton after Calgary folded, even though Quebec officially owned his playing rights. Bear with me. So a lot of people are interested in him. But what really hurt Don, we didn't talk much about it last time, but I found out more information by research. He had missed most of the 70s season with a cracked kneecap, and he missed the first half of the 74 season with a back injury that required surgery. Now, he didn't return until January 74, but again, he was looking for better climbs, and I think it was better for him to WHA, but like those injuries were a nagging situation. Now, 76, he had 25 goals in 78 games. 77 with the Cowboys, he had 32 points in 72 games. Then moved on to the Barrie Flyers of the OHA Senior League and Salt Lake Golden Eagles of the CHL in 78. So, a very much in demand WHA player. I did mention last podcast, and I apologize for this, but I didn't have enough information. But some information was passed by me recently as to the what do you call the high level of interest that the WHA teams had with him. Now, Chicago Cougars were taking a lot of draft picks in 72 on probably potential future players. Now, because he was a number one draft pick, I believe he was drafted a little bit too high, but still, he was on the radar because of that high pick. And the WHA teams, now look at this. You got Chicago drafted him, okay. Minnesota traded for him. Minnesota then traded him to Calgary. Then Quebec was in the mix as well. So that's 4 or 5 WHA teams that had him high on the radar. And what's kind of interesting with this, ladies and gentlemen, he never left Calgary. Calgary left him. That team folded May 31st, 77. So when Calgary folded, like I said, it's just all the players on the team. He could have went back to the AHL, which I don't understand, but I would have brought him into the Maple Leafs or the Canadiens or even back to Vancouver. Now, what was interesting about him as well, he also played center during his pro hockey career. Now, which was kind of interesting is Bobby Schwartz and Andre Boudreau, not everybody could keep up with those players, very fast skaters. So him playing center or evolving showed you the type of skill that he had. Playing for the Flyers, you had to be, multi-dimensional because there were a lot of good players on his team. Now, the big game that a lot of my family, since I did the last podcast, my family always also reminded me of a big hat trick he scored against Toronto on March 25th, 1973, which basically put him on the map with a lot of people. I first became aware of him with his OPG hockey card, the 74 season, although I recognized him before from playing. Beautiful 1974 card, and you had that beautiful long hair that some of my relatives had, which was quite interesting. That was the disco heavy metal style at the time. Very handsome guy. But what I heard through my contacts, he did a lot of hockey school instruction during the off-season of his playing career, also gave back, and he went into real estate business in Southern California after his retirement. You would be shocked how many people that played in WHA and NHL in the 70s got involved in real estate into the early 80s. I would figure it's at least 2 to 5% of all players in the NHL, because if you see people like Don, very personable, to survive in the NHL and WHA, you got to be a people person. And from what I heard, every place he played, he was well respected. And as young fans of the NHL, especially Vancouver, my only regret for him, and I've spoken to different people about this, he didn't have a chance to play in that 75 series, Montreal and Vancouver, where Vancouver gave Montreal everything they were worth in that 5-game series when, again, Lafleur scored a winner in Game 5 in overtime, where Vancouver had won the opening game, and like I said, Vancouver was just building as a franchise. Every player that played with Vancouver in that early 70s, including Schwartz and Boudreau and everybody else, Gary Smith, Boddy, Dennis Kearns, everybody else, that Stanley Cup appearance in the early 80s, it was 10 years in the making, but it was based on the hard work and dedication like Don and other people. So we rarely do a part 2 on a podcast, but I think I've done more WHA podcasts since I did Don, but I think it's good to better explain what's going on. There's various media that's popped up, information media over the last 6 months, that have drawn more information about the WHA situation with certain key NHL players, even like players like Terry Ruskowski, players like Pat Regan, some people that crossed over high in the WHA radar became NHL stars or semi-stars. It's quite interesting. And it doesn't even, not even the mid-70s. It's like from that 1972 and the secret draft we've talked about before. Very interesting WHA drafts over the years. And, look at Rod Langway as well, like Mark Napier, the machinations there. And we're getting to a point at the end of WHA, there was trades between the WHA and the NHL, so it was pretty weird. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more about Don Tannahill, or different people that have been drafted and had a lot of connection to WHA. One really nice site is hockeydraftcentral.com. I would check it out. They do really good work there. I don't know how often it's been updated in the last short while, but it's a bastion of information. It is basically a CV of every player that's ever played. Again, Wikipedia is there, Internet Hockey Database, the Hometown Hero podcasts or information pages that are done, especially in the WHA teams, Calgary, Minnesota, Edmonton, the New York teams, the New Jersey teams. Is quite interesting. But again, Don Tannahill, his story of how we got to the WHA deserved another podcast. That's why we're doing it tonight. So the last one was called The Many Lives of Don Tannahill. This one is officially called The WHA Lives of Don Tannahill. Anyway, if you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe. And don't forget, if the team folds on you, you don't fold on the team. Call it the Don Tannahill factor. But when you're on a team and the team folds, I mean, you can't be fired if everybody else is fired, right? That's the way it goes. Thanks for listening. Bye.